good afternoon. This is Kurt Beckett, Chair of FSEC, calling our January 21st meeting to order at 1:31 p.m. And Ms. Grantham, if you could call the roll, please.
Certainly, Chair. Department of Commerce. Department of Ecology.
Councilman Nelson here.
Department of Fish and Wildlife.
Nate Pamplin, present.
Department of Natural Resources.
Maverick Ryan, present.
And Utilities and Transportation Commission.
Brian Rybaric, present.
For local government and optional state agencies, for the Hop Hill Solar Project, for Benton County, Paul Krubin. For Carriger Solar, for Klickitat County, Matt Childs. For Wallula Gap, for Benton County, Adam File. For Golden Eye Best, Skagit County, Robbie Eckroth.
Robbie Eckroth, present.
Cascade Renewable Transmission for Skamania County, Asa Leckie.
Asa Leckie, present.
And City of Stevenson, Jeff Breckel.
Jeff Breckel, present.
Assistant Attorney Generals, John Thompson.
Present.
Zach Packer.
Present.
And Talia Tuitt. Moving on to council staff, Sonia Bumpus. Present. Amy Hopkemeyer. Present. Amy Moon. Present. Sarah Randolph. Sean Green.
Present.
John Barnes.
Present.
Joanne Snarsky.
Present.
Maria Belkina.
Present.
Lisa McLean.
Present.
And Noel Sharp.
Present.
Operational updates for Kittitas Valley Wind Project. Wild Horse Wind Power Project.
Jennifer Galbraith, present.
Grace Harbor Energy Center.
He's present.
Chehalis Generation Facility.
Jeremy Smith, present.
Columbia Generating Station.
Jean Paul for Columbia, present.
Columbia Solar. Goose Prairie Solar.
Yep, Nelson here.
And Ostria Solar.
John Volz, present.
And do we have anyone present for the Council for the Environment?
Yes,
Yuri
Sarah
Corral.
Reineveld and Yuri Corral are present.
Thank you, Chair. There is a quorum for all councils.
Thank you very much. Moving on, Chair would entertain a motion to adopt today's meeting agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
The agenda's been moved and seconded. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda? Hearing none. All in favor of moving the agenda forward, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay. Agenda is adopted. Moving on to the minutes, we have before us the minutes from our December 17th meeting. The Chair to entertain a motion to adopt the minutes.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
The minutes have been moved and are on the table. Are there any edits to the minutes? I know of none for my review.
I specifically reviewed for the spelling of council this time, but I did not notice any modifications needed.
Thank you for bringing that
Yes.
forward into future reviews. So, all right, then with that, we'll call for the vote to approve the minutes. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, minutes are adopted. And a special privilege for all of us today, we have before us three resolutions, one each for our former council members, Lenny Young from the Department of Natural Resources, Eli Levitt from the Department of Ecology, and Stacy Brewster from the Utilities and Transportation Commission. And so the chair would entertain a motion to adopt resolutions 358, 359, and 361.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. The resolutions are now on the table, and the chair will do his best to try and appropriately highlight a few specific items for each of our former council members. For the members of the public, you'll find a full description for each of their activities and service here on the FSEC Council. And at general consensus, I will not read the full resolution, or let alone all three, but we'll endeavor to highlight a few special things for each of them, and then would welcome other comments from our council members, and then ultimately we'll call the question, and certainly would welcome hearing from our special guests here today. So starting with Lenny Young, and we'll go in numeric order here. For Resolution 358, Lenny was appointed on March 5th, 2021, served nearly 5 years, and certainly brought a tremendous depth of knowledge and background in many respects, but especially given his natural resources focus at the Department of Natural Resources. Each of these former council members participated in 6 reviews, in 6 site certificate agreements. Those are Goose Prairie Solar, High Top Solar, Austria Solar, Horse Heaven Wind, Watoma Solar, and Carriger Solar. And certainly several of those, in particular Horse Heaven, stand out, have even more extra work than I think any of us can fully appreciate. So I want to thank all of you for that. The other thing that Lenny was certainly known for was characterized by challenging assumptions and examining multiple angles of an issue during council deliberations. And let me note that for each of you, the resolution on this is that the Energy Facility Site Evaluation Council recognizes your outstanding, unwavering, and faithful contribution to the council's siting and regulatory activities, and gratefully expresses its sincere gratitude for the commitment, dedication, and effort that each of you have shown through your service. Moving on to Eli Levitt, who began his service with FSEC on January 10th, 2022. And each of these council members certainly brought, diligence in their deliberation and how best to balance many of the different impacts and mitigation measures that every project deserves. And I'm sure we'll catch a mute there when we can. Eli contributed again to the same 6 eventual site certificate agreements. In addition to his thoughtful focus on the review, his attentiveness to public comment and thoughtful questions and continual advocacy for continuous improvement and expansion of public outreach was certainly noted, and solicitation of public input from across Washington's diverse communities was an area of focus for Councilmember Levitt. And lastly, and saving the distinction of the longest serving council member, at least that I'm aware of, for nearly 7 years, Stacy Brewster on behalf of the Utilities and Transportation Commission, who started with the FSEC Council on January 8th, 2019. She also gets the high award for 73 regular council meetings and 31 special meetings. And I should have noted that Eli had 58, but Lenny had a full 80. So I think you're still in number 2, Lenny, but each of you, deserve praise for even a handful of those. So let me also especially say here in the past year that Stacy, Council Brewster, was ably and with careful consideration guided council discussion as acting chair for Horse Heaven, including on the Species 5 issue that is also before the council today, Wallula Gap, Golden Eye Bess, and Hop Hill. And she has participated, and I had the honor of doing so alongside her, in a government-to-government consultation for the Golden Eye Bess project. So in particular, a closing comment here was just particularly insightful questions in adjudicative processes and deliberations were noted as an area of extra expertise that Council Brewster brought to the effort. So with that, certainly a closing, just heartfelt thank you to each of you for all your service. I learned a lot from you and appreciated just in the time in the past year that I was able to share with each of you. I can't thank you enough, and especially Stacy for grabbing that gavel on my behalf, which was always going to be an extra ask of someone, and that came to be you. So thank you for that. And with that, I would turn this to my fellow council members, and I would actually maybe start with Council and Chair Roberek, who has a member of the UTC here being honored. So,
yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do want to just thank everybody for their service here, and I think you've paraphrased those very well, and just the great work that's gone on here. I want to additionally appreciate Stacy's work for the UTC here in the room with us today. I want to just just give a great shout out to her. The resolution outlines some of the projects, as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, some of the work very specifically in the chair's spot in the last year or so. But I think it cannot capture, even though it attempts to, just the thoughtfulness and the preparation that Stacy brings to her work and the perspectives she offers. We're very thankful that she'll continue to be here at the UTC, continue to support the work that we're doing here with FSEC and my participation here. But just wanted to thank her again, and just grateful for her perspectives and knowledge. And thank you, Stacy.
Very well. Let me continue then, I guess. Councilor Ryan, did you want to make a comment on behalf of your agency as well?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Lenny, big shoes, huge opportunity to follow in the footsteps of someone like yourself, and appreciate all the insight lent to the council over the years. Everything that's been mentioned, your role in these deliberations, it's really the model of public service, both your record of service here as well as at the agency. So I appreciate the opportunity to step in your footsteps and appreciate everything you've done.
And Councilor Nelson, did you want to make a comment on behalf of the Department of Ecology?
Thank you, Chair Beckett. I sure do. Just wanted to thank all 3 council members receiving a commendation here, Young, Brewster, and Levitt. Eli's dedication to public comment and open process and all that transcends his entire career, not just his time on the FSEC Council. And just wanted to publicly thank him for that. I'd like to think that Eli walks so I can run, but he's about a foot taller than me. So in my analogy here, we're going at about the same rate of speed. Thank you, Eli.
Thank you. Council Pamplin or other council members, any other comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, there's great appreciation for all 3 council members, and we'd just like to specifically mention Mr. Young. He's been an executive at DNR for a lot of years, and our orbits have overlapped and intersected on a variety of other forums outside of the FSEC process. Always found his style of engagement, being curious, articulating very complex and difficult discussions in a way that brought further understanding across the meeting. And I always thought he was very fair and just an active listener, and I've always appreciated just working with you, Mr. Young. So thank you for all of your years of service. Thanks.
Thank you. And Director Bumpus, I apologize for not giving you a heads up earlier. I would turn this to you just to see if there's any comment you want to make on behalf of yourself and or the staff in the agency. So, and it's okay if not, but I should have added your name in that list earlier.
Thank you, Chair Beckett. I appreciate the opportunity. I just wanted to say thank you for all of the work and the dedicated time and attention to FSEC over those years that you served. And also to thank you. Each of you were always very respectful to staff and worked very well and very collaboratively with the FSEC staff. And we really appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you for the good comments. All right. Members of the council, with that, I will call the question. Again, we have resolutions 358, 359, and 361 on the table. All in favor of passing those resolutions, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Unanimous, of course. I don't know if there's any comments our guests would like to make from the floor. I would certainly welcome that. No obligation. And otherwise, we do have resolutions here that are actually framed, and we would present those to you and probably grab a quick photo. So if you wish. Councilor Young, please.
Quick remarks from me. I first would like to thank our outstanding commissioners of public lands, Commissioner Hillary Franz, former commissioner, and Commissioner Dave Upthegrove, our current commissioner, for having the confidence to give me the opportunity to represent them and the department. And thank both the former chair, Kathleen Drew, and the current chair, Kurt Beckett, Director Bumpus, and all the FSEC staff, including our counsel from the Attorney General's office, John Thompson, for the tremendous support that they provided during the time that I served. And not the least, the incredible thoughtfulness and dedication of my fellow council members when we were dealing with very complex issues with competing priorities. I was always impressed by the dedication and the thoughtfulness and the seriousness with which they took these important issues and how they discharged their duties. So tremendous experience, and I'm very thankful for the opportunity to have been on the council.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? No obligation, but definitely.
Well,
Stacy Brewster.
Lenny said it very well. Thank you to all of you for leadership, to staff. You guys, it wasn't easy, but it wasn't impossible. You did, you prepared us well, always had information for us. I really appreciate your dedication, your integrity, all consummate professionals, leadership to Chair Beckett, Chair Drew. Learned so much during this opportunity, and I really appreciate the honor to serve.
Yeah, I guess I feel obligated to also say something. I just thank you very much for the opportunity to serve. I believe very much in the mission of the agency and the council. I have a child with asthma. I have friends and family with asthma. I look forward to a future where there is more solar, there is more geothermal, there is more wind, there is more battery storage, more smart grid, and hopefully our skies will be clearer, we'll have less smog, and a new future to look forward to. I certainly respect that all these decisions are tough. I strongly recommend the importance and the value of doing site visits together, staff and council members and the public, doing those site visits, listening to each other, talking to each other. Those to me are extremely valuable, and I hope those continue into the future. I was mentored briefly by Hedia Adelsman at Ecology, and she always had so many stories and talked so much about the site visits to reinforce their importance. So yeah, good luck with the decisions ahead of you, and thank you to the staff and the council members for continuing the work.
Thank you very much, each of you, for your good and meaningful comments. With that, I would ask that Councilor Barrick, if you would grab the resolution for Stacy, and if you would grab Lenny's, and I will, Council Nelson, on your behalf from the Department of Ecology, I will carry Eli's. And so we'll present these to you, and hopefully someone could help with the photo out there, and then we'll resume the rest of our meeting here in less than 5 minutes. The meeting is still going. We haven't adjourned, or recessed, I should say. So.
Feel better? Yeah.
Maybe over here so that the light is.
Yeah, let's do it right.
John, thank you, John. There we go. Yeah. Just, there you go. Yeah, once you just come on up, and that's okay. We'll do it together. So, thank you.
Could we step forward a little bit? The lights are.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
From experience.
Okay, everybody ready? Thanks. A couple. Still taking some? Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And as we pick back up here, let me just note for our honored guests that you have more than earned the right to leave. Welcome, of course, in this public meeting at any time, but you have earned the right to walk out the door. So I'll leave that to your good judgment. All right. With that, we will move to our project updates at 1:50. And let me, on behalf of my fellow council members, as well as our project participants and members of the public, had kind of a broader announcement to share, and certainly welcome comments from council in particular as we go through this portion of the meeting. I believe Director Bumpus or Amy Hofmeyer will add a further word here, but basically there's a proposed change that would be being implemented in February, which would evolve these project updates, essentially, that for the normal updates that have nothing to report other than what's already in our packet, that in-meeting verbal, whether virtually or rarely on occasion here in the meeting, that we would suspend that in-meeting reporting out process and instead have those same written reports in our packet, and those that would be done to maintain our, continue our compliance standards that are associated with each of the site certificate agreements. But ultimately, I think achieving a more easier, more efficient way of our work. And so that's the underlying intent in changing from having a kind of down the roll with not always things to report. Certainly the ability for any of our project participants to highlight something that they choose to highlight or something that we mutually believe needs more discussion in a meeting. That can always be done quickly just before the meeting, but otherwise I think we would try to consistently note these are the projects that are just going to have written reports, and then obviously we would focus on the balance that would receive the normal verbal update, whether that was by a project participant or staff. So with that, let me turn to Director Bumpus and Amy Hofmeyer to see if there was any further additional kind of context you wanted to provide on how that new system will work and continue to maintain our compliance. So.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Beckett, and good afternoon, council members. Yes, so just a couple of things. In looking at ways to have the council meetings run a little bit more efficiently and spending our time together focused on applications that are under review and on facilities that maybe have compliance issues that we need to address. We think that this is going to add some efficiency to the meetings. We being staff, looked at the site certification agreements for our operating facilities to ensure that if making this change is still compliant with the terms and conditions of those SCAs, and it is. And so we did double check that, and we think that this is consistent with their compliance requirements. As to how it will work, I'll punt over to Amy Hofmeyer and see if she wants to add any additional details about how this would function.
Thank you. So in the background, very little will change. Staff are in regular communication with their operational facilities. And so if there are compliance activities pending or something arises unexpectedly, that will continue to be communicated with staff and brought forward to the council as things arise. And staff will continue monthly updates and coordinate with regular updates that will still be provided monthly as they are now. And so with that respect, compliance oversight is not diminishing in any way. We are still verifying compliance with permits, with SCA requirements, and so on and so forth. Really, the only change will be on the in the meeting, where if there is nothing non-routine to report, we will not continue to say that every meeting. Rather indicate which facilities have nothing non-routine to report, but their update will still be available in the council packet for your review. And facilities that do have something non-routine to report or an upcoming permit renewal or mitigation activity that they're providing a report on, those will still be verbally provided at the council meetings.
Great. Thank you for that. And I should just also acknowledge a couple other folks in this. One, Director Bumpus had confirmed with me that this suggestion had certainly pre-existed my arrival at the agency maybe some years back. Certainly a question I had in kind of coming to FSEC. I do reflect that ultimately these project updates don't often take a lot of time because I kind of annotate how much time we're spending. But ultimately, I am mindful of, the time it takes for the participants to log in and others and call the roll. And so hopefully we can, again, do good work and maintain our compliance with high confidence here, but still have that benefit of a little easier work. Council Pamplin has certainly asked this question and made a suggestion along these lines. So I want to just recognize that shared intent and good suggestion. On a closing note, let me see if there's comments from our council, and I would also note for our project report outs here coming up, if you, as you do each of your project updates, as I call on you, if you have any question or comment you want to make while we're all here kind of in this transition, please do that today as I call through the projects here momentarily. But with that heads up to our project participants, let me turn this first to the council for any quick comments they'd like to share. Council Pamplin? Okay.
Well, yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Just really appreciate y'all taking a look at this and seeing if this change could be implemented. I appreciate where we're landing and the direction we're headed. So thank you.
Appreciate the focus on efficiency and looking at that efficiency for all parties involved, and appreciate the change. I support it. Thank you.
Council Nelson, excuse me.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, thank you, Chair Beckett. Yes, I appreciate the efficiency, and yeah, let's let it rip.
On that note, all right, moving on to project updates, the Kittitas Valley Wind Project. Mr. K-Stay. We will move on for now and can come back to Kittitas Valley if need be.
Council Beckett, John Barnes is able to speak to the facility updates.
Mr. Barnes.
Thank you, Chair Beckett and Council. This is staff for the Kittitas Valley project. I will be speaking on behalf of Sarah Randolph. There's no updates the facility update is provided in your packet. There is no non-routine updates to report.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the Wild Horse Wind Power Project.
Yes,
Galbraith.
thank you. Thank you, Chair Beckett. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. So thank you, FSEC Council and staff. This is Jennifer Galbraith with Puget Sound Energy, representing the Wild Horse Wind Facility. For the month of December, we have nothing non-routine to report and no new updates regarding the cleanup of the damaged turbine, other than that winter weather has stalled the removal of the remaining 15% of turbine components, but we anticipate cleanup to be completed before the end of this month as weather and site conditions allow. Thank you.
Thank you. The Chehalis Generation Facility, Mr. Smith.
Good afternoon, Chair Beckett, FSEC Council and staff. This is Jeremy Smith, the Operations Manager for the Chehalis Generation Facility. I have no non-routine items to report.
Thank you. Grace Harbor Energy Center, Mr. Pace.
Good afternoon, Chair Beckett, FSEC Council and staff. This is Eric Pace for Grace Harbor Energy, and Grace Harbor Energy has nothing non-routine to report.
Thank you. The Columbia Solar Project. If we have participant for that today or not. Nothing from staff on that?
Yes, I will be providing the update, I believe. So this is John Barnes, FSEC staff for the Columbia Solar Project. The facility update is provided in your packet. There are no non-routine updates to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the Columbia Generating Station and WNP 1 and 4. Kelly Elsa.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chair Beckett, council members and staff. This is Katie Hall for Columbia Generating Station and WNP 1 and 4. While the agenda shows no updates for these facilities, we previously discussed with FSEC staff using this opportunity to notify of a recent submittal to FSEC for the Columbia Generating Station. On January 15th, Energy Northwest submitted a SEPA checklist to FSEC for the construction of 2 warehouses at the Columbia Generating Station. This submittal follows FSEC staff's recent decision on January 6th to require SEPA review despite earlier indications to the contrary. Energy Northwest and FSEC have held conversations regarding scope and timeline of the project since September of last year. So Energy Northwest emphasizes this late change jeopardizes the compressed schedule for the upcoming refueling outage, which is critical for operational readiness and regional energy reliability. So therefore, Energy Northwest has requested FSEC's determination on the SEPA checklist by February 2nd, and we've urged for expedited review, including waiving the public comment period if no significant environmental impacts are identified. Thank you.
Thank you. It's my understanding from staff that recent request came in on Friday is under review, and we may hear a little bit more on that in our February meeting, but appreciate the added context of what's trying to be accomplished there and the requested timeline. I don't know if there's any other comment from staff that you'd like to share, but it's great if you do, and otherwise I know we'll close out on this in February. So.
Just a little bit more context to add. We have received submissions, a SEPA checklist, as well as some plans that we're reviewing to ensure code compliance. And we are working with the facility and reviewing what process milestones are appropriate for the environmental review and compliance with their site certificate agreement.
Thank you. Any questions of what's been shared from other council members?
I just want to make sure I heard the dates right in the presentation. I think it was Katie. Did you say you've requested review of that by February 2nd?
That was the
date. Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So obviously that's before the next FSEC council meeting. So I'm just, how do we think about lining the request up in our next regularly scheduled meeting?
I think staff are basically, especially on the SEPA review, trying to make sure what's required there. Generally, all of what we're talking about is within the director's delegated authority and would fall more on that side of the line. But I think, in general, of course, there's an abundance of just transparency and doing work together. Surfacing it here is part of that. And if there's further consideration from the director on the FSEC council, any action required, then that would come back and
come back to us. Okay, got it.
I don't know if there's anything else along that.
Yes, thank you, Chair Beckett. And we'll provide an update, a more, I would say, comprehensive update to the council as to what we determined based off this review of the latest submitted material. So we'll be providing a more detailed update to the council at that time. So even though this does fall, the review is more related to what's required of FSEC per SEPA. We're still going to be providing an update to the council as to what we're finding with respect to the SEPA review.
Very good. Thank you.
Appreciate that. And certainly appreciate the added comment of where the warehouses fit into the larger refueling standard event that goes on with the Columbia Generating Station, all of which is contained within the current SCA that is on the books that's already received the council approval. So those details are what the staff are working through, and we'll make sure we're all on the same page as to what the council, if anything, needs to be done. So, okay, very well. And thank you again, Ms. Elsahagen. And I will still get that pronunciation more consistent over time. So with that, Goose Prairie Solar, Nelson Gia.
Hi, Nelson here from Brookfield and Goose Prairie. No non-routine updates to report. We did have some curtailment due to BPA work on the Midway Moxion line for 2 weeks at the beginning of December. But that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Austria Solar, Mr. Volz.
Good afternoon, Chair Beckett, council members, and staff. This is John Volt with Cypress Creek Renewables representing Austria Solar Facility. In the month of December, the O&M facility continued construction. We did achieve mechanical completion of both the PV and the facilities. Made preparations to receive back-rate energy from the utility this month. That did occur. It'll be on our next report, but major milestone accomplished there in the construction of the facility. I'd also like to draw attention to the charitable work. Some of the site team donated some time to the Sunrise Outreach Food Bank, help store the storage cleanup, food food organizing and handing out the donated food for local area. I believe that's in Yakima. Other than that, there's nothing non-routine to report for the period.
Thank you very much, as well as for the additional detail. All right, I believe that then brings the Carriger Solar project update, and Joanne Snarski is here to provide that update.
Thank you, Chair Beckett and council members. For the record, this is Joanne Snarski, the siting specialist for Carriger Solar Facility in Klickitat County. On December 2nd, 2025, the governor's office notified Chair Beckett that the Carriger Solar Site Certification Agreement was approved by the Governor Ferguson. The agreement was executed by both parties and became effective on December 15th, 2025. On December 31st, 2025, the Confederated Tribes and Bands of the Yakima Nation filed a petition for judicial review of the council and governor's approval for the site certification. FSEC staff are working with our assistant attorneys general to respond to this filing. In the meantime, we are continuing to discuss Carriger's timing for submitting the plans required in the site certification agreement. May I answer any questions?
Council members, comments or questions? Straightforward today. Oh, Council Childs, I didn't see you join. Good to have you here. Please proceed. But we're not hearing you so far if you are speaking. Still not getting anything in the room, Council Childs. All right, well, I'll tell you what, if Council Childs pops back in, we can hear you, then certainly we will take those comments. Otherwise, we'll move on to the next project for now. Ms. Grantham, let me know if that technical issue gets further clarified.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's much we can do on our end. It's showing that he's unmuted, but we're just not able to hear him for some reason. Yeah.
Probably on his end. Okay, so Council Childs, since we're going to move into horse heaven, let me see if one last chance. Not for now. I think he dropped off. Okay. So we'll keep an eye out for Council Childs, but in the meantime, let's proceed to the Horse Heaven project update. And we have the Ferruginous Hawk Nest Mitigation Plan that Amy Moon is going to make a presentation on. I will first, though, just note that given my larger recusal on Horse Heaven, I have the honor and appreciation of handing the gavel on this particular item to Council Pamplin. And I would note, just for the benefits of my council members and members of the public, even though I have recused, I'm not participating as a council member on this particular action. I have read all the materials. I have read all the public comments. They're important to me, including just these issues mapped to other projects. And so I'm certainly trying to keep running alongside you so that I can be a better chair when the next issue comes up for me directly. So with that, Council Pamplin. And soon we'll turn this to Ms. Moon for the update would be the start, I think.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Moon, go ahead and proceed, please. Thank you.
Right. Good afternoon. Thank you, Acting Chair Pamphlet, and to the FSEC council members. As required in the Horse Heaven Site Certification Agreement, or SCA, development and approval of a mitigation and management plan is required under Mitigation Measure Species 5 Ferruginous Hawk, when project components are proposed for siting within the 2-mile core ferruginous hawk habitat. The certificate holder worked with the Pre-Operational Technical Advisory Group, or PTAG, PTAG, to develop a project-specific ferruginous hawk mitigation and management plan for approval by FSEC. This plan received PTAG consensus prior to submitting the mitigation plan to FSEC. The Ferruginous Hawk Nest Mitigation Plan includes the 4 fundamental requirements stated in Spec 5. Number 1 is a description of efforts to site project infrastructure to avoid core habitat identified as the area within 2 miles of nests documented in the Priority Habitats and Species Database. That's the PHS database. Number 2, a description of when construction activities will be undertaken to avoid sensitive timing periods for ferruginous hawk. Number 3, a description of pre and post monitoring programs that will be conducted to establish habitat use within the lease boundary, mapping of ground squirrel colonies and other prey, identification of potential flyways between nest sites and foraging habitat, and monitoring of potential flyways to inform the final turbine sighting and orientation, ongoing monitoring of nest use and territory success, and number 4, a description of restoration activities that will be undertaken during project decommissioning to enhance ferruginous hawk habitat in disturbed areas. Staff reviewed the proposed plan and posted a copy of the ferruginous hawk nest mitigation plan to the FSEC public website for a 14-day public comment period from December 30th, 2025 through January 12th of 2026. FSEC received a total of 32 comments. FSEC State Environmental Policy Act Specialist Sean Green is here to provide a summary of the Species 5 ferruginous hawk nest mitigation plan and information on the comments received during the recent public comment period on that plan. Sean?
Thank you, Amy, and thank you, Acting Chair Pamplin and council members. This is Sean Green, SEPA Specialist for FSEC. I wanted to give you all a brief, or maybe not so brief, rundown of what was included in the Horse Heaven Ferruginous Hawk Nest Management Plan and discuss some of the substantive comments we received during the public comment period. The Nest Management Plan adopts all of the ferruginous hawk mitigation outlined in the Horse Heaven Wind Farm Draft Habitat Mitigation Plan from the application for site certification, including compensatory habitat mitigation. It furthermore includes a commitment to protect an area that supports sufficient ferruginous hawk habitat that will achieve mitigation acreage targets defined by the mitigation ratios set by FSEC. It discusses the potential installation of artificial nesting platforms in areas with specific site conditions and where WDFW staff believe that there is a high confidence that those platforms could be used by ferruginous hawks. It formalizes the monitoring plan put forth in the final EIS to perform nest and mortality surveys for 3 of the first 5 years of project operation. And finally, it commits to a curtailment of turbine operations during daylight hours within 2 miles of an active nest, unless a qualified biologist with WDFW and FSEC approval determines that the turbines are outside of the foraging areas for those nests, or the certificate holder makes use of an automated curtailment technology that responds to ferruginous hawk presence. As Amy mentioned, this plan was reviewed by the Pre-Operational Technical Advisory Group, or PTAG, and approved by that group prior to being submitted for public comment. During that comment period, 32 comments were received, and substantive comments generally fell within one of 6 arguments that I'd like to run you through. First, there was an argument presented that FSEC should impose financial penalties for each incident of injury or mortality to a ferruginous hawk. Staff is not recommending that this change be incorporated. Apart from the questionable legality of FSEC establishing fines for wildlife take, FSEC staff is confident that the exclusion areas imposed around all historic nests, the management measures in this plan, and the mortality adaptive management strategies that are currently being developed by the certificate holder for future PTAG and FSEC review are sufficient to address direct ferruginous hawk mortality. The second argument that was that the artificial nesting platforms discussed as a mitigation option in this plan should instead be made mandatory. Staff is not recommending that this change be incorporated. In our development of mitigation and discussions with WDFW staff throughout the environmental review of this project, artificial nesting platforms have been seen as having a limited and situation-specific mitigative effect. The primary factors responsible for declining ferruginous hawk population numbers are habitat conversion and reduction in prey species availability, neither of which are necessarily addressed by installing artificial platforms. Thirdly, several commenters argued that the annual operation phase nesting surveys should continue throughout the life of the project rather than for 3 of the first 5 years as currently proposed. FSEC staff is not recommending that this change be incorporated. The nesting survey plan proposed in the EIS and included in this plan is functionally consistent with WDFW guidelines and was developed in concert with WDFW staff and technical experts on the PTAG. As a result, staff believes that this plan, in combination with the exclusion areas and adaptive management strategies, is sufficient to address ferruginous hawk impacts. The fourth argument that we received was one that claimed that the habitat mitigation ratios that FSEC developed with WDFW for this project should be updated to reflect the ratios presented in the WDFW wind and solar guidelines that were published about 4 months ago. Staff is not recommending that this change be incorporated. The habitat mitigation ratios applied to this project exceeded the standard WDFW guidelines at the time of review and were developed to specifically address habitat impacts to this project, or from this project, by FSEC staff, WDFW staff, and independent consultants. Furthermore, the ratios presented in the recent guidelines are explicitly identified as preliminary recommendations, with the guidelines assuming some level of collaboration between developers, permitting authorities, and WDFW to arrive at project-specific ratios that are appropriate, which is reflective of the process that FSEC went through to devise the current ratios. Changing the ratios at this time would also require an SCA amendment, which is not something that FSEC can unilaterally impose. Number 5 was an argument that the certificate holder should be required to use automated detection systems with turbine curtailment triggered by observations, rather than it being considered an option as in the proposed plan. Staff do not recommend incorporating this change. As discussed in the plan, these systems lack the capability for species-specific identification at this time. Requiring the certificate holder to install and use these systems at this time could result in turbine curtailment at any time any raptor species of similar size and/or shape to a frugious hawk is observed, which exceeds the intent of this mitigation plan. The plan discusses the potential use of these systems in concert with observed frugious hawk activity when practical and when further developed, and FSEC staff believes that these considerations to be appropriate in the proposed plan. The final substantive argument was for FSEC to require that one blade of each turbine be painted black to reduce frugious hawk collisions. Staff is not recommending that this change be incorporated. While this novel mitigation technique has seemed promising, though varied, results in recent studies, it is still too experimental at this time to be required as a mitigation measure. There are still engineering questions related to the long-term effects of increased heat retention that the black painted blades will experience, and whether painting the blades with carbon-based paint affects their reaction to lightning strikes. Furthermore, wind turbines are painted white in part to make them blend in better with the sky when viewed from the ground. There is a risk that the visual analysis and impact determinations made by FSEC for the all-white turbines may not be accurate to the visual aesthetic impacts the viewers would experience from turbines that are partially black. It is unclear whether the positive benefit of potential reductions in frugious hawk collisions would justify the increased adverse impacts to visual aesthetics. Also, as I mentioned before, FSEC staff is confident that the suite of mitigation developed for this project sufficiently addresses the potential for direct mortality impacts to the frugious hawk. And apart from these substantive comments, there were several editorial comments that staff will recommend for incorporation into the final plan. These include edits such as adding a citation to WAC 197.11.768, wherein mitigation is defined, replacing the word flyways with the phrase flight pathways, including more detail on the length of the habitat monitoring programs, and adding clarification that nest surveys will be performed by qualified biologists. These modifications would not affect the substance of the plan. Are there any questions from council members before I hand things back to Amy?
Not seeing any. Oh, go ahead, Mr. Rivera.
I think I've got a few. So thanks, Sean and Amy, for the updates there. Appreciate one of my questions was on WAC 197.11.768. Sounds like there will be references to that specifically in there, and the updates to some of the terminology. Good to see. On the artificial nesting platforms, I think the issue that was raised is should it be mandatory or not. I wonder, functionally, as I was reading through the comments and the materials, I got to, well, how do we get to a point where looking at this in a very specific way that a wildlife biologist from Fish and Wildlife would be able to say, actually, it makes sense to do it in this circumstance. Developer, please do that. How do we get to that? How do we assure that that is the way this is going to work? Because that seems to make logical sense in my mind.
Sure. I can look at the exact language used in the plan, but in the plan, they do discuss the potential for use of artificial nesting platforms in the areas that are meant to represent compensatory habitat mitigation, the areas of conservation. And the criteria that the applicant had, or I'm sorry, the certificate holder had proposed in the plan included sufficient foraging habitat for the species, the lack of nesting sites in that area, and consultation with WDFW staff to ensure that there is a high likelihood of the use of those platforms by the Ferruginous hawk. The only concern with implementing like a minimum number of artificial nesting platforms that must be put up is it's very much dependent on what is available in the area and whether there is a pressing need for those, and the cost associated with installing those could be better assigned to actually protecting more habitat. But it's staff's opinion that the description in the current plan, the proposed plan of those platforms being as an option for further mitigation is appropriate. If there's a council desire to see an amendment, though, we can.
Yeah, I guess the only thought that I had for amendment is if WDFW staff says, here is a situation where that makes sense. Let's say there's a tree that had a nest in it that is somehow felled, who knows how, whatever. To say here's an example where it would make sense to put up an artificial nest. It's kind of a thou shall follow WDFW's, instead of a consultation with them, it's if they come and say, here is an example where thou shall do that it gets included in this mitigation plan, that is an option that Fish and Wildlife has. I don't know if I'm sort of explaining that circumstance well, but that to me is, there's this limited circumstance where I think a biologist would say, that makes sense, go do that. And if the way I read the mitigation plan right now, they could say, thanks for the consultation, we don't think it's necessary.
If I might add some information here. So part of the adaptive management is because FSEC is the enforcement agency rather than DFW, we retain the authority to impose that. Again, with consultation with DFW as, having the in-house species subject matter experts. But if something is to arise where WDFW indicates that it is appropriate to go ahead and install an artificial nest platform, that authority to impose that would reside with FSEC.
And I think we could add language to the plan to make that relationship more clear. And if that's a change we wanted to make. Right.
And so I just want to make sure I understand, Amy, what you're saying is if that circumstance arises, WDFW would come to FSEC and say, here's a situation where an artificial nest makes sense. FSEC, please impose that requirement on the developer. This plan allows for that chain of events to happen and the artificial nest to get put in place.
Correct. Both the PTAG as the pre-operational as well as the TAC will continue to be in coordination and monitoring these activities. So we anticipate continued communication on these subjects throughout the life of the facility.
Okay, I think I have some comfort there, but just Sean.
Sorry, I didn't interrupt. One additional point is the final plan for the compensatory mitigation has yet to be fully developed, and that will, as Amy mentioned, go through the PTAG it will be the PTAG at that point, and come to FSEC for approval, and that will include the applicant's formal proposal on whether or not they're going to install artificial nesting platforms and where. So that would be a point where FSEC can use our regulatory authority to determine whether there should or should not be some added.
I have a couple other questions along. I'm just going to go down the list in order that you had them. On the annual, I guess it's monitoring. The way the plan reads now, it's 3 of the first 5 years. Intuitively, I thought of, it seems like the first years of operation are going to be the most critical. And so I just wondered if there's appetite to be a little bit more, I guess, prescriptive in this one. Is all of those 5 years make some sense to me, that there'd be monitoring in each of the 5 years rather than 3 of the 5 years. Certainly the first 3 years makes a little bit of intuitive sense to me. I just wonder how it gets landed at 3 of the first 5 with I recognize the flexibility there, but I just wonder from a species mitigation perspective if we shouldn't think about that a little differently.
Yeah, so that was a proposal that we developed in our consultation with WDFW staff. Their typical recommendation is for the first 3 years of operation. In our discussions, we considered whether it might be more helpful to add that wider range, so to capture a larger period of time, but still with not exceeding that 3 years of total surveys. In the, I think, 6 years that the certificate holder has run nesting surveys in this area to this point, there's been 1 active nest observed. So given the rarity of an active nest, going for more years was seen as a way to potentially capture an active nest with the higher likelihood of either seeing an active nest or evidence that the site had been that there had been an active nest in one of the off years. So that was the justification.
Appreciate that. And I guess I just don't know is there a, I don't know what the cost is of running an annual program for 5 years versus 3 of 5. What the significance of that is. Maybe that's some context you could enlighten me with.
I don't have the cost numbers available, but we can look into that.
We can certainly follow up with some ideas for that. You know, the applicant, in this case, certificate holder, is responsible for all of the expenses. So as we're working with DFW and working with different subject matter experts there, they're billed for the hours that those experts are spending in meetings and calls with FSEC staff. And so the cost is substantially higher if you're adding additional years of monitoring. But we can get you, an estimate if that would be helpful.
I looked at the other council members, there's appetite in that, but I think that's one area that had some focus for me. The other, and maybe Council Member Pamplin, I don't want to put you on the spot, but the updated ratios or mitigation ratios, obviously working through the WDFW process now, with the goal of using the best available science and the most updated information. I appreciate the explanation that it's also going through a process may not be the most updated. I also recognize the need for certainty in these processes of this was the ratios that were at the time, but I wonder if WDFW has a position or thought on the ratios, because that's the expert agency on these ratios. So.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Riberic. Why don't I first just turn to Ms. Moon and Mr. Green to talk about WDFW's position within PTAG. And if that doesn't fully cover it, I can offer some remarks. Thanks.
Sure. So there's one primary member of WDFW on the PTAG along with 2 alternates. They attend every meeting, and they are one of the technical experts who are responsible for reviewing all of the certificate holders' proposals for pre-operational plans and surveys. So their staff did fully review this plan and approved it as it was drafted and submitted for public comment. So their staff approved of the mitigation ratios that were developed at the time when we were doing the EIS and approved of the ratios incorporated here.
Thanks, Mr. Green. Yeah, I would just add that that's pretty consistent value as far as when we introduce new guidelines, that projects that were kind of in the queue are operating under the guidance that was published at the time. So appreciate the interest in moving this forward. And if we saw something I thought was really substantial or the science had really moved the needle, I think that was something that our representative in the PTAG would have advocated for, but I'm comfortable with the work that the WDFW staff person did at PTAG to recommend those ratios. Thanks.
Very good.
Any other questions?
Just one last one.
Please.
Sorry to keep belaboring these points, but the last one is on the automated detection. Having come from the tech sector, I recognize the technology might not be there today, but technology moves at the speed of technology. And I just wonder what is the process if a year from now it's very clear that technology exists to be very species specific on curtailments? What what would FSEC do relative to this mitigation plan at that point to say we'd like to see that technology implemented?
Yeah, so the way it's written in the plan currently is the use of that technology would be like an exception for the turbine curtailment in the event that there is frugious hawk activity observed. As for whether we would want to require the use of that technology in whether there is frugious hawk activity observed or not, that's not something that I think we've considered. That might be something that comes up in the adaptive management plan that the certificate holder is currently developing, especially in relation to one of the primary concerns of that plan is adaptive management in the event of mortality incidents. Turbine strikes on frugious hawks are very rare within the state, but given the limited population numbers, each instance is potentially substantially of concern. So I guess my thought at this time would be to see how that technology would be incorporated into the adaptive management plan, especially since it is kind of still hypothetical for the moment, at least.
That's helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Riverick, and much appreciation here to Ms. Moon and Mr. Green for the overview thus far, as well as the summary of the comment themes that we heard and the proposed responses. Ms. Moon, is there anything further on your presentation?
Yeah, one final statement is that the staff are requesting that the council approve the Horse Heaven Wind Farm Frugious Hawk Nest Mitigation Plan. But you wanted to follow up on it.
Yeah, I think maybe since we're going to follow up on a few things and see whether there need to be edits there, do we wait for approval? Or approve with the understanding that we'll get that information?
So I think we identified strengthening the language around implementation of artificial nest platforms. And I think in the question, I think, is maybe to the council, do you want to wait to approve this plan until we have follow-up information on those items identified? Or would the council want to vote to make a decision on the plan pending the edits discussed?
I think you could approve it contingent on the amendments discussed that Amy just listed being made. If you're comfortable with the substance of the plan today.
Thanks, Ms. Bumpus. I see Mr. Nelson's hand is up. Go ahead.
Hello. Yeah, if that sounds like a good approach to me. I'm not smart enough to make that motion, but I did have a question if you do come back for more information. So on section 5, the mortality mitigation chapter per section, and this might get to the nesting question as well. It speaks of qualified biologists in coordination with Fish and Wildlife and FSEC. And this could just be for my edification as a relatively new council member, but is that a qualified biologist employed by the certificate holder, or is it third party, or is it Fish and Wildlife, or is it FSEC? So I was just wondering what the employment status of that biologist might be, I guess.
It's my understanding that it would be an independent biologist employed by the certificate holder with FSEC and WDFW approval.
Thank you.
Okay, so before we kind of further discuss whether or not we want to adopt the plan pending amendments or not, I just want to check to see if there's any other questions for Ms. Moon or Mr. Green from the council. Okay, council, is there any particular direction you would like to proceed with in terms of doing an early approval, or not an early, approving this plan, noting that there's some additional work that's going to be incorporated relative to the artificial nest platform, or would folks like to delay and then wait and see those edits made into the plan, as well as some of the other editorial edits, and we'll have a final plan hopefully brought forward in February?
The only reservation I have, in general, I think there's a lot of good stuff in here. I appreciate all the work that the PTAG and staff have done to get there. I think the one outstanding question is, to me, whether that initial whether we should do 3 of the first 5 years of reporting back or observations, and just there's a cost difference in those two, and that's the information we don't have. And so in my mind, I think all of those 5 years could be one option. The first 3 years, another option. I guess that probably doesn't change the cost tremendously. You're still doing 3 years, but I wouldn't mind knowing that before making a decision and just seeing what the appetite is to maybe strengthen that a little bit, just knowing that those are probably the most important years of the plan. That said, I am also mindful of the fact that there's timelines and associated movement for the developer. So I guess I'll turn to staff of whether or not any holding off on this is detrimental to the overall project.
Thanks, Mr. Roberek. Director Bumpus, is there any consequences or concerns on your end if we were to delay adoption of this plan?
Well, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, I think I would just, I'm just thinking about Executive Order 25-11, where FSEC, along with many other agencies, are looking at how we can expedite and accelerate plan approvals for those facilities that are still in a position to take advantage of the federal tax incentives. And so I would say that if there's general comfort with this plan, that we can, it would behoove us to move forward with it if we can, but I also recognize that there may be some tweaks that we still want to make. So that's the...
No, it's, well, the UTC being also named in that executive order, I'm familiar with it and recognize the concern there. Ultimately, and I appreciate staff's recommendation or further thoughts here. Ultimately, I think I'm comfortable with the way the mitigation plan is written. I just point out that these are areas where I think we can continue to focus and just at least bring some maybe options to the table when we get to this point. But again, I don't want to belabor this over what is a relatively minor point or piece of the overall mitigation plan. But you've heard my thoughts on this, and I'll leave it there.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Roberek. Ms. Hofkemeyer?
I wanted to suggest that maybe there's an opportunity, because the adaptive management plan is still in development, that if under the guidance of that plan, it seems appropriate to add additional years of monitoring, that might be another place to capture that based on guidance of the PTAG, DFW, and biologists as appropriate. So there may be additional opportunity to increase monitoring, particularly if the first year or first couple of years, the data suggests that more monitoring is appropriate.
That sounds like a good suggestion, and thank you for reminding me of the word that I was not able to get out of my brain of monitoring. So thank you.
Great. Thanks, Ms. Hofkemeyer. Mr. Nelson, I saw your hand come up earlier. Did you have a question or remark?
Yeah, I just wanted to state, I just wanted to, again, thank the PTAG for all the work they put into this. It's a very comprehensive plan that offers widespread protection to the species. I should know this, but can we make a motion to adopt yet, or do you call for that?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Nelson. I've got some language here that I will try to put on the table and ask for someone to move. But what I'm looking for at this point is if the council make a motion to approve the Fruginas Hawk Nest Mitigation Plan submitted by Horse Heaven Wind Farm LLC in compliance with Special Status Species Mitigation Measure 5, commonly referred to as Spec 5, of the Site Certification Agreement for the Horse Heaven Wind Farm. And in addition, that staff would be incorporating the editorial comments as well as strengthening the discussion around the artificial nest platform and the consultation with WDFW. So with that, is someone please signal that they would make that motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Roberek. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Nelson, any further comments or questions before we move to a vote?
Hearing and seeing no hands, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll let the record note that Chair Beckett has recused himself from this vote. And go ahead, Mr. Ryan.
Just also recused to make note of that.
Okay, just want to double check that we have sufficient council members for a vote with 2 recusals. Okay. Great. So that motion passes. Again, Ms. Moon, Mr. Green, thank you for your work, as well as for PTAG's efforts here on preparing this mitigation plan. And I'll pass the gavel back to Chair Beckett.
Thank you, Councilor Pamplin, and I'll try to do a better job of following Councilor Roberek on putting my camera on, at least on occasion. So with that, we will actually go back to, and thank you for the extra effort as chair, Councilor Pamplin. So do we have Councilor Childs back still? We would take his question or comment on the Carriger Solar project update.
You see that he's online and unmuted again. I'm not sure if we can hear him. If Councilor Childs would like to try to speak up.
Councilor Childs, we're ultimately not hearing in the room, so sorry about the technical challenge today. No, Councilor Childs, we still can't hear you. I do see your text in the chat, though. Okay, so let's move on then for a moment to the Hop Hill Solar update, and John Barnes will provide the update.
Thank you, Chair Beckett and council members. This is John Barnes, EPSEC staff for the Hop Hill application. Staff are working with the applicant on the submission of additional application materials for the Hop Hill project. EPSEC anticipates receipt of these materials by spring of 2026. Staff are also working with the applicant to submit a comprehensive cultural resource report for the application. Following receipt of the report, staff will distribute to concerned tribes and offer to schedule government-to-government consultation to discuss impacts and potential mitigations. Are there any questions?
Council, comments or questions? Hearing none. Moving on to Wallula Gap, since you're also providing that update, Mr. Barnes, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair Beckett and council members. This is John Barnes, EPSEC staff for the Wallula Gap application. Staff are continuing to work with the applicant, One Energy, and the Yakima Nation Cultural Resource Program staff regarding impacts identified in the traditional cultural resource property studies and report conducted by the Yakima Nation for this application. Identification of potential project impacts and mitigations that can be resolved is part of the SEPA determination process for this project. Are there any questions?
Questions, Council? Okay, then we will, looks like we're probably losing Council Childs. I'd say, Council Childs, we can always try and catch you next month, at least in the public forum, and obviously you know how to reach. Oh, there we go. Yes, we can. Please proceed. You're very, very clear as well.
Thank you very much, Chair Beckett. I apologize for the problems on my end. Going back to the Carriger issue and the Yakima tribe filing a petition for judicial review, wanted a little bit of clarification on that if we could. First of all, do we have any estimated timeline for a decision on that petition for judicial review? And second, while we wait for that, what is the status of the project? Are they moving forward, or is there some sort of injunction preventing that at this time? Thank you.
So Thompson, would you like?
Yeah. So this is John Thompson with the Attorney General's office. There is provision in the in EFSLA, RCW 8050, for filing a petition for review of a governor's decision in Thurston County Superior Court. And then the process is for the way judicial review works under the Administrative Procedure Act. The court reviews the agency's record and sitting in an appellate capacity. And so what we need to do is compile the agency's decisional record and then provide it to the court. Usually there's often a number of months where the completeness of the record is being determined, and then likely a motion to transfer the case up to the Supreme Court to be heard. So it's typically a multi-month process. There's nothing that prevents the certificate holder from proceeding with implementation of the site certification agreement while that's ongoing. I think that answers your questions, Councilmember Childs. Does that?
Yes. Thank you, Council. I appreciate that. So it sounds like things will be moving forward while the litigation kind of continues in the background to see if it will go before the state Supreme Court.
Correct.
Director Bumpus, did you wish to add another word? Or
I think, thank you, Chair Beckett. I think John Thompson answered it. It was just to address that other part of the question that Carriger is proceeding and that we're going to be in receipt of plans, we think, fairly soon. Begin the review of those. So the work's continuing along with the litigation.
Great. Thank you for the added emphasis there. And I think to your earlier point too, that project is also on the governor's executive order, and hence our focus is only more so in moving those projects forward. Okay, Councilor Childs, was there any other question or comment you wish to make on Carriger?
No, thank you very much, Chair Beckett.
Okay, thank you. So with that, we will move to the GoldenEye battery storage project update. Ms. Snarsky.
Yes, thank you, Chair Beckett. Again, this is Joanne Snarsky, the siting specialist for the proposed GoldenEye battery energy storage facility in Skagit County. Last month, I reported that the applicant had recently submitted a revised site plan for the facility. However, I misspoke. What they did submit was a revised conceptual site restoration plan. However, we anticipate that GoldenEye representatives will submit a more formal site plan in the coming weeks. Last week, staff sent our fourth data request to the developers. We anticipate their response to that by March 1st. The need for submittal of information is required to help us complete our State Environmental Policy Act determination for the project. May I answer any questions?
Council members? Council Eckhart, just to make sure if you had any question or comment.
Councilmember Eckroth here. No questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, then we will move on to the Cascade Renewables Transmission Project, and Maria Belkina will provide our update.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Beckett and council members. For the record, my name is Maria Belkina, siting specialist assigned to and reporting on the Cascade Renewable Transmission Project. Staff continue to review the application for site certification for compliance with WAC 463-60 with the objective of determining of whether the application contains sufficient information to support the next phase of review. In parallel, staff are finalizing the first consolidated data request, informed by application review and agency input. Staff expect to receive comments from contracted agencies soon, which will help inform the next request for additional information from the applicant. Staff continue to coordinate with key state and federal agencies, and January, staff conducted 2 interagency coordination discussions with the Washington Department of Natural Resources and the Washington Department of Ecology to support alignment and process, sequencing, and environmental review considerations. EFSEC has received a formal invitation from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to participate as cooperating agency in the preparation of an environmental impact statement, with the Corps serving as NEPA lead agency. Staff have prepared a response confirming EFSEC's willingness to participate and to coordinate NEPA and SEPA processes. In addition, a meeting is being scheduled with the Columbia River Gorge Commission to initiate early coordination and communication regarding the project and applicable Gorge Act considerations. With respect to water quality permitting, staff are intentionally sequencing the Section 401 water quality certification process so that it follows a sufficiently developed SEPA environmental record. Importantly, key water quality issues will be addressed through the SEPA review, which would then support the Section 401 process. Staff continue to support tribal engagement planning and coordination consistent with state requirements. Initial government-to-government consultations are scheduled to begin in early February, including the first consultation meeting with the Cowlitz Indian tribe. Following input received at the informational meetings and the land use hearings, staff reach out to local jurisdictions along the project route to ensure that they are aware of the need to appoint a council member where the project falls within their jurisdiction. We have since received an appointment of the council member from the city of Stevenson and have received indications of pending appointments from the Clickitat County and the city of Camas. We expect to receive additional appointments in the coming weeks. Our legal counsel, John Thompson, can provide further information of proceedings while local jurisdictions make decisions in their appointments. That concludes my update. I will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, was there a more proactive comment you wanted to make first, Council Thompson, or?
Well, I do have comments. I wanted to address a couple of issues about the question that Ms. Belkina mentioned last about proceeding, while we're awaiting other appointments for council members.
Yeah, let's go ahead and hear that.
Okay. So a couple of questions, if you recall, at the public informational and land use consistency hearings that were held in the 3 counties that are involved in this project were raised about whether the public informational meeting and the land use consistency hearing should have been convened prior to all the appointees that are eligible to be on the council being seated. So I wanted to speak to that just briefly and give you my thoughts on that topic and what might lie ahead and on those topics. So first, regarding the public informational meeting, so RCW 8050-0901 is the law that requires that to be held, and it basically says the council shall conduct an informational public hearing in the county of the proposed site as soon as practicable, but not less than 60 days after the receipt of an application for certification. So that's the basic mandate. EFSEC has adopted rules about public informational meetings and the land use consistency hearing. And the only kind of requirement in this regard is it states that before conducting either the informational public hearing or the public land use hearing, the council will notify local jurisdictions. It doesn't require waiting until appointments are made. So neither the statute or the rules require that all jurisdictions that are eligible to appoint someone have done so prior to that meeting. The mandate is really to hold the meeting within 60 days of receipt of the application. And I'd also point out that the purpose of the meeting is also described in the rules, and it's basically for the applicant to make a presentation about the project, a general description of the project, reasons why the site was selected, a summary of anticipated impacts, and then for the general public to be afforded an opportunity to present written or oral comments. So the reason I mention that is because the council's role is pretty passive. It's, at this point, it's just to receive information from the applicant and the public. It's a very early opportunity basically to get some reaction, some understanding and reaction to the project. And of course, then there's, over the course of reviewing an application, there's a lot of other hearing and public input opportunities on SEPA, as well as the adjudicative process. With SEPA, there may be a scoping hearing. There may be a hearing for receipt of comments on a draft environmental impact statement. And then, as I mentioned, there's the adjudication. And then there's also an opportunity for the council to provide additional hearings as you see fit. So in my opinion, yeah, there's an opportunity. And I would also add that these hearings are recorded on video and audio and transcribed by a court reporter. So there's an opportunity for council members to review that information when they come on board too. So in my opinion, there's nothing, as I said, the requirement is that this meeting be held within 60 days. You complied with that. I don't think there's any mandate to go back and redo it. You can re-examine once the new council members are on board, whether you feel there's a need for additional process in that regard. But that's about, I think, what we can say at this point. Regarding the land use consistency hearing, there's no requirement that be held within 60 days of receiving an application. It just says that it should be subsequent to the land use consistency hearing. So my opinion is that the record for that decision really hasn't been sufficiently developed, and because of that, staff is in the process of developing a set of questions to send to the applicant to further develop that information. And then, I think I would recommend affording the parties who spoke to that issue, any parties who want to speak to that, to have another opportunity to respond to what the applicant has to say, and really, better develop the record for that. And to the extent that you can, I would say that you should probably wait to deliberate on that until you do have the other council members impaneled, so that they have an opportunity to speak to that. I would add that the council members, by FSEC rule, are only to speak or to deliberate on and vote on the segments of the project that are within their appointing jurisdiction. So that's another kind of wrinkle of all this to be aware of. So, yeah, I just wanted to add that context in case you had questions about it. I know there was a lot of head scratching about that maybe at the initial meeting. So just adding that to Ms. Belkina's report for your background information.
No, thank you. I think it's a very important update and certainly helps to have that clarified, knowing some of it is still in process of getting further clarified. And in that regard, I was going to acknowledge up front and ask if there's a comment from our two local representatives, Commissioner Leckie and Council Leckie, who's joined us previously, and now Council Jeff Breckel representing the city of Stevenson. But let me just turn this open to all council members, knowing our other council who are here with us in the room, and Council Nelson. Certainly these questions have been, I think, on their minds as well, Council Thompson. So thanks for clarifying that. I'll turn it open for comments. Council Pamplin.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Mr. Thompson, for the overview. So, the statutory requirement for the public information meeting, 60 days within receipt of the application, makes sense. Have the project applicant explain the project proposal, an opportunity for public input, just a very early engagement and public awareness of, here's a extensive process that's coming. And so I appreciate that. I think the part that's of interest to me is the obligations for the land use consistency hearings. So I do think it would be beneficial to make sure we've got the full roster of council members, but I'd look to you to kind of figure out what can be done, what work can be done while those are still being appointed. But also, I'd just like to make sure that as FSEC, we're reaching out not just to the project applicant, but to those local governments and municipalities for their understanding of how the project is consistent or not with their own ordinances. To me, asking the applicant to say, well, you can imagine a scenario where an applicant would respond saying, yes, it's consistent, and the county saying, no, it's not. And I guess I'd like to make sure that we're hearing directly from the local governments whether or not it's consistent, rather than an applicant's interpretation of what they've heard from the local government, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. I mean, I think it is staff's practice to, if Ms. Hofmeyer or Ms. Bumpus want to speak to this, to try to solicit that input from local land use authorities.
Yes. So we do have a data request that we're preparing to send out, and there are questions in that data request that should, when we receive responses, supplement the application as to land use. I think we need to look at that. We also have discussed sending follow-up letters to some of the local governments who have indicated that they're going to appoint someone to the council. They just haven't chosen who that person's going to be, and we've indicated to them that they'll need to get up to speed, read the record, and be familiar with that. And as Mr. Thompson noted, I agree with this point, that once you have the full composition of the council, I think that might be a time ripe for, okay, what do we have in the application that helps inform us about land use consistency? And if it's still deficient at that point, do we hold another hearing? Is there some other mechanism that we want to implement to gather more information and supplement the record so that the council can make a decision with respect to land use consistency?
Mr. Chair, just another follow-up. I also recall looking into this, and there was a statute indicating that the project applicant may work with a local government to get a local or a land use consistency certificate, and that is brought forward at the actual hearing, which is also kind of, I mean, that seems ideal, but I guess I would also give a lot of deference, but tell me if I'm off base on this, that if there was a land use consistency certificate even after the hearing, but before the council's making a decision, that we would welcome that. I mean, anyway, the statutes on this particular process, I think you kind of stumble through it rather than like as far as really clear. And so I don't know if that's even something, Director Bumpus, on a future agency request legislation to kind of map some of these processes out, because I think they kind of put you sometimes in a box that's kind of challenging to operate within.
I would just, I don't know if Mr. Thompson has something to add, but I would just note that, I think it's a good point. The council does have broad discretion in terms of holding additional hearings and taking other steps to supplement the record as it's needed. And every project's different, as we all know. And so we may find in this case that we want to do something like that in order to supplement it. So I think that, as I said, I think it's a good point. I think in the framework that we're operating in today, I think we've got a lot of options for the council available to supplement that record. And the other thing I was just going to mention too is that there is no time limit with respect to this decision, right? So we're not working as tightly as we were, like, say, in the scheduling of the public informational hearing. Sorry, I saw.
No, it's fine. I would just like to add, in those initial hearings, the applicant did indicate that they were working with some local jurisdictions to obtain certificates of consistency, which is one of the items requested in the data request that we're preparing, to have those submitted to us to become part of the record. We are also working, as you indicated, with some of the local jurisdictions, planning departments, to get some of that input that you indicated on their interpretation about whether or not this project is consistent. So that part of the record is still under development. We're still working with those entities to try and, get all of that information in. And so once we have all of that, we will make it available to the council and the public.
So we'll take two comments here in order. Council Ryan and then Council Lucky.
Thank you, Chair. Want to take a moment to echo some of Council Pamplin's comments and observations about some of those procedural concerns. I think I felt similarly, and happy to hear in the staff update about also agency consultations with DNR and DFW that have been scheduled. I think that'll be a key part of what I look for in a future, version of the record, is especially talking to DNR's aquatics section about land use in the river. So definitely woke me up to sort of the complexity and the scale of the proposed project, and looking forward to hearing more information and continuing to review the record. So that's first. Secondly, I just had a quick question, was also encouraged to hear about some of the updates around the tribal engagement, and would love to know if you could share a little bit of additional information about who else might be on the consultation schedule, even if they haven't been officially contacted yet. Would love to know the staff's approach about who to consult with and gather with, given the complexity and scale of the proposed project.
Do you have a moment, or at your fingertips, maybe some additional information, Ms. McLean?
Yeah, sure. Just let me take one little note too. Okay, yeah. So thank you for that question. Lisa McLean, Tribal Liaison for FSEC. We sent out notification to all 32 tribes. We've heard back from and been in close contact with Yakima, CTUIR, Umatilla, Warm Springs, Grand Ronde, and Cowlitz. Okay, we haven't gotten only Cowlitz has asked for the formal consultation. Everybody else is aware they can ask for formal consultation, but in the meantime, we're having active dialogue going with them, and we're trying to, as I've assured them, is to try to get some meetings together at some key milestones. So just this morning, we were talking about, are there any milestones that are coming up? We should call people together. And as part of that, also, we're in close contact with CRITFIC, who is, a lot of the tribes those tribes that I've mentioned are sort of relying on CRITFIC to stay on top of this thing. So we've been in touch with them, and we've been briefing them since, the summertime, even before we got this application. So they also know. So I guess my outreach has been, we're here. Don't go listen to rumors. If you've got a question, call me, find out, and I'll get the answer. You know what I mean? So if you're feeling like you don't have the information you need on this, then call me, and I will try to track down the information for you, because this is going to be a long process. And I think there are going to be periods where tribes are going to be like, what are they doing? So we do have good contacts, contacts that go not just with the chair of the tribal council, but rather at the staff level, which I feel good about, because then we know that they know who to talk to on our side, and we know who to talk to on their side. And when we need to, when they want us to raise it to the tribal council level, I feel confident that we'll be ready to do that.
Very much appreciate that answer, and sort of addressed a follow-up that I had already, which, I was curious about any interagency coordination we might have with Oregon FSEC regarding those tribes that are in Oregon but have their reserve rights in the state. But it sounds like we're in touch, and there's not really a need to coordinate through the agency if we're just going to be directly in touch. So really comprehensive, and appreciate the answer.
Thank you for the Insta update. And I'm sorry to our local Council representatives, I will turn to you next, but let me just add one comment. I had sent an email earlier on this, but I'll just, out of transparency, just go ahead and add it into the discussion. And this, certainly my intent would be to do any of the following in full coordination with what Lisa and Ms. McLean has just laid out. I'm concerned always about the congestion at council doors, tribal especially, but I don't think that's untrue for local government. So we need to go proactively, but we need to go at the most efficient, appropriate time. And hence, if we could have one conversation, not 6, that's probably ultimately better for those other local and tribal partners. But in this case, something that I'd like to explore, both a little bit as my onboarding as new chair, but also as I have thought further about the CRT project, is just that we request consultation, and we can do that in coordination of which tribes have more focus on this. Cowlitz have contacted us. We appreciate that. And I'm looking forward to that upcoming conversation very soon. But to the degree that can be more slightly proactively, done now at the front end, it would seem something that I'd like to explore further. So just wanted to go ahead and share that in the moment here. Go ahead, Councilor Ryan, and then I promise Councilor Lecky we will come to you soon.
Apologies. Just, I appreciate that idea. I think it's a good idea and is definitely in alignment with Executive Order 25-10 about the language about being proactive. I think that's a good thing to explore, and I'd support it.
Appreciate that. Believe it or not, Councilor Lecky.
Yeah, thank you. I know the comment was made about the land use certificate, and that's one of the things I was going to comment on. The question I would ask is the land use certificate required? Does the county issue it? And should that have been done before the land use consistency hearing? I do know, talking to our planning staff, that there was a request to meet with our prosecutor, planning director, and planning staff about a land use certificate, but that meeting did not happen before the hearing. So those are some questions outstanding to me. So does FSEC take that on for the land use certificate, or is it still the county's responsibility? Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Yeah, I can speak to that. The certificate is not required. It's basically something that the applicant at its option can try to obtain from the local jurisdiction. And if it does, that establishes a presumption that there is consistency, which can be rebutted by other people, if they feel that's inaccurate. But so it's just it's an optional thing that the applicant can obtain, not required.
So local county planning does not have to issue anything regarding this project. This is all FSEC then.
Correct. There is no requirement for local planning or the local jurisdiction to even take a position or to provide a certificate. I mean, it's certainly, we welcome that and even hope that they do, but that there's no requirement, which partly may answer Councilmember Pamplin's question to a degree, because there's no way to compel the local jurisdiction to do so.
So then there's no local SEPA then either?
No, FSEC is the SEPA lead agency.
Can I jump in just to make sure that I'm interpreting Council Lecky's question? The council will, at a future date, make a land use consistency determination for the project. And if the local jurisdiction has issued a certificate of consistency, that would be part of the record for that decision. However, FSEC would not issue a certificate of consistency on the local jurisdiction's behalf. If that is provided for the project, that would come from the local jurisdiction, not from FSEC, but it would be part of the record for the land use consistency determination made by the council.
So then it's irrelevant if the county issues that or not. Is that correct?
I wouldn't call it irrelevant.
No, not irrelevant. I think that Mr. Thompson put it as if there's a certificate provided, there's a presumption of consistency. And so that, I think, aids the council's decision making Whereas in the absence of that, you don't have that presumption. And so you're looking at the question, you're looking at the record, is this project allowed here? Is there anything that prohibits this project from being cited here with respect to land use? So having that piece of information as part of your record where the county is saying, we think it is consistent, you have that presumption there. But without it, you're relying on the other information that you have to answer the question to consistency.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand the process then. So if that presumption is made in the county planning, or there's no application or land use certificate, then FSEC just takes on that role? Is that how this process works?
Well, I guess you could say that. I mean, I think the council would look at first at whatever information the applicant puts forward about what are the applicable zoning codes, what are the applicable land use plans, and makes whatever argument they want to make about whether the project would be prohibited by those. Other parties can respond, but it's the council's is required to make a determination as to whether the project, under local permitting processes, say, would be allowed or prohibited. And it can do that. Yeah, it can do that by researching the county's relevant code provisions itself and looking at the arguments that have been made by the parties before the council. Does that help clarify?
Yeah, it does. So then the county's not involved with the permitting process then for our land use certificate.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, no, thank you.
I would just emphasize, and Council Breckel, I will come to you next. Ultimately, no matter what form the input comes from the local jurisdiction, it is most important to FSEC as an agency to have, whether it's to say, yes, this is consistent, or no, it's not. Ultimately, FSEC, and it is one of the superpowers that has its controversies, that the council, if it chooses, to interpret that it's not consistent, but a project needs to continue to go forward, that is one of the powers under statute that FSEC has. I don't think any of us, I'll just speak for myself, would take lightly overriding a local view, but that is part of the role and authority of FSEC. So the more that information in whatever form it comes into FSEC's record from each local jurisdiction is of preeminent importance to me, and I believe to the agency historically, as well as on a more complicated project like we're experiencing for the first time, I think, in the history of the agency as far as a multi-jurisdiction transmission project. So that's part of the dialogue that we're sitting here having today in public. So unless I really misstated anything.
No, thank you. I guess that's where the confusion was, because it seems like they engaged to get the certificate from the county, then the meetings didn't take place and it stopped. That's what was kind of confusing me, was did they have to fulfill and finish that requirement at the county? Or if FSEC's taking that on, then maybe that was just, maybe it wasn't needed, so they moved on to FSEC. That clarifies that. Thank you.
Okay, it's good discussion from my perspective, and I think, as Council Pamplin noted earlier, there's opportunity to clarify and make this smoother, where that could be done through a policy or process rather than a statutory change. Count me in for the non-statutory path, but we may bump into to those limits and need to seek more authority. Council Breckel, welcome as a new member of the council. Thank you both for enduring our onboarding process, which we tried to not make too long. Council Breckel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I go back. I attended the initial public information meeting in land use consistency hearing here in Skamania County, and I think there was a fair amount of, both confusion and concern over the FSEC process as it applies to this project. That there was a land use consistency hearing, and we didn't hear from any of the local government within Skamania County in terms of land use on this particular thing. And quite frankly, that some of the local jurisdictions, certainly the city of Stevenson, Didn't even realize that this hearing was ongoing at that time. So I think as we're looking at this process, I think you'll find, particularly with some of these smaller jurisdictions, that there's not from any formality, any basis in terms of understanding the process, the FSEC process as it looks at these types of projects, or how it works, or how they can engage and participate in that process. So I would hope that, particularly as you're looking for representatives from some of the other local governmental jurisdictions, that somehow there's that good clarity that I think we got on some of the onboarding discussions, at least as a council member, but also some discussions, I think, with local governments in terms of how they can effectively engage in this process, because they aren't knowledgeable of it. This is something new, and it's something complex, and it's something that affects their local jurisdiction.
Appreciate that comment. And I think there's learning in real time as well as in earlier months coming out of the hearings, but no doubt opportunities here to learn and grow from, I think. So appreciate that. Councilor Nelson.
Thank you, Chair Beckett. Yeah, I was at the Skamania land use hearing, and I made a comment that in retrospect was largely process ignorance. I think, and it was about sort of like along the lines of, if this was a Skamania County shoreline management plan, would it, pass mustard or not? And it just wasn't at the point of the project yet that information is really out there. I think it'll come out in SEPA. But the point of my ramble, Councilman Lucky and Councilman Brickell, is that local engagement, and if there is a local certificate of compliance, we would that's a big part of at least I'd say I'd definitely be a part of my deliberation, and however that looks, I'm still not edified enough to know like when that will come up. I'm just trying to say that I hope the public gets a real big bite at that apple, when that information is submitted and gets out there. And if it's through a hearing process, if it's like a comment period, I hope it's a good long one, couple of weeks, as FSEC has been doing a great job giving. And or if it's another hearing, great. It's Skamania County, I think specifically, since it's going to run on land, is what I'm most curious about regarding the land use consistency.
Thank you. Other comments from council? Any closing comments from our good staff team that's been supporting this discussion?
Thank you, Chair Beckett. Just one comment. It was talked about earlier in Ms. Bokina's update that we've recently learned that the Corps is going to be doing an environmental impact statement, and that we are coordinating with them and collaborating with them on that. Staff do intend, I don't know that it will be in February, it may be more in March, we'll see. But we're in discussions with the Corps and many other agencies as well as tribes. And we've discussed internally doing a presentation for the council about how the SEPA process will work and how that coordination will work. So I don't know if it'll be in the form of a full-on PowerPoint presentation or just a hefty verbal update, but we do intend to provide the council with information and the public with information about how we're going to do that work, the environmental review, given that there are multiple agencies involved. But we're not at the point now to be able to share all the behind the scenes details of how that will work, but it is on the radar and we intend to update the council. I don't want to commit to February yet.
I understand that. But thank you for the added foreshadowing of what's to come. Okay. Other comments? Hearing none, we will wrap up our project updates. And thank you. I know this meeting is going on, so we'll try and move through our final three items quickly. But I think that conversation was important. It's one that we weren't able to really do in December, just having gotten out of the hearings, as well as our November meeting in the middle of the hearings. So I appreciate the extra time that we've ended up spending here today. With that, I will turn this to Director Bumpus for both her cost allocation update and any other updates that she wishes to give before perhaps if you would go ahead and do me the favor of turning that to Lisa McLean when you're done, and we'll just wrap up that way.
Thank you, Chair Beckett, and good afternoon, council members. For the cost allocation update, this is for the non-direct cost allocation for third quarter fiscal year 2026. This covers January 1 to March 31, 2026. I will not read off the percentages. They have not been changed since last quarter's update. They're in your packets, so if you have any questions about those, do follow up with me. But in the interest of time, we'll not read all of those off. As far as director updates go, I mentioned earlier Executive Order 25-11, which is the acceleration and support for clean energy projects, given the federal rollback of energy tax credits. So FSEC is participating on the acceleration team. We actually have a number of staff that are involved in tracking that work. There is a report that we need to prepare that's due at the end of the month. But just before the executive order was issued, we had been in discussions with other agencies and preparing a list of projects that we thought might be in a position to take advantage of the federal tax incentives. And so I think that in some respects that group is ahead of the work a little bit. Do reach out if you have any questions about that report. And Ms. McLean is engaged on that effort. If you have detailed questions about what we're going to be putting in that report, please follow up with Ms. McLean. As far as other director updates, we do intend to do an update with the council on budget and on legislation. Right now, we're in the throes of legislation, so not a whole lot to share that has any concrete, to it. But we'll give you an update in February on that. Any questions before I hand this to Ms. McLean? Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, just to slip one in. Thanks, Director Bumpus. Just a quick question. How did FSEC fare within the governor's 2026 supplemental operating budget proposal? Thank you.
Ms. Gomes, do you want to?
This is Nabila speaking.
I need to come forward, though.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. Excellent question. This is Nabila speaking on behalf of FSEC and FSEC staff. FSEC received a 15% proposed cut. So compared to other small agencies that received a 5% cut. So that's a significant cut compared to other small agencies. We met with OFM and the governor's staff just to determine what the impacts would be to the agency, especially on the operating end of things. And this is specific to the general fund. And we anticipate that we will have an update in February once we know exactly how it's going to impact operating costs. Because what essentially is going to have to happen is we'll have to offset some of our general funds, which include 4 staff members and legal fees and other things like that, onto either overhead or onto project costs, which is, we don't know what that looks like. And so we're just determining it, but essentially it's about a $245,000 cut to our budget, which we do have strategic actions in plan. And so now we are pivoting a bit. So we anticipate having a full-fledged update in February.
We will provide an update. And one of the things is that we're not surprised, right? We knew. So we had already been talking, this was definitely on Nabila's radar, and we had been talking about what is the strategy, not if this happens, but when it happens. We were surprised about the I guess you could,
How heavy?
heavy-handed, somewhat heavy-handedness, given that we're a small agency compared to the impact on others. But I think that we've got some good strategies for how we can offset.
Yeah, thanks for the updates.
I think that takes us to Ms. McLean, as you said.
Hi. So now I'm here as the Ledge Policy Manager, Lisa McLean. I'm here to introduce a new staff member, Noelle Sharp, who has joined us as the Rules Policy Coordinator. Very happy to welcome her to the team. She just started on Friday. Her job will be helping us work through these rules, work on internal policies, and generally helping the policy team. Noelle comes to us with I'm really happy. I just said to Director Bumpus today when I was introducing Director Bumpus to Noelle that she has a great deal of, I don't know, checks all kinds of great boxes. Number one, she comes out of most recently, private environmental consulting firm. Before that, she spent 8 years at DNR. And when she was at DNR, I'm not even going to try to remember to say exactly what rules project she worked on, but it was a rules project that brought her in contact with tribes, heavy involvement with the tribes, and just a kind of controversial rules project. So not that I expect any of our rules projects to be controversial, but any of them that they are, I know that she's going to be able to handle it. So I welcome her, and I think she's going to be a great addition to the team.
Thank you. It's nice to meet you all.
Welcome aboard, for sure. You're welcome to say anything else you wish at the moment, and otherwise I won't put you on the spot further. So.
I'm just getting onboarded, so I'm really happy to be here. I've already learned a lot, so I'm excited.
Excellent. Well, on that note, I will just also highlight for the public in general that the update to pre-application, adjudication, and site restoration rules are being considered. That was in a public meeting on the 7th of January, which some people may have still been out or things like that. So more to come, and Noelle, knowing you're here to be a part of all that is most welcome and important. But from my perspective, all ideas or, constructive feedback, criticism, whatever folks want to send into us, please send it. And if it doesn't fit exactly in one of those three buckets, I would suggest we might still know what to do with it. That may not be immediately versus other higher priorities, but now's the time to please, let's collectively bring our best ideas forward. Because I said it in December, and I may just keep saying it, especially in these times, we got to stick together and we got to work together. And that's just, to me, the bottom line. So, and the opportunity. So with that, I'll also note a thanks again to Council Pamplin and the Fish and Wildlife Agency that provided our wind and solar guideline presentation last time. And I meant to mention when we approved the minutes, having reread them, it was just, I think, a really good discussion and just helpful in the kind of work that we should be doing. We may not always have time, to do that in every meeting, but as I reread those minutes, I was super appreciative of what I read there, and I would encourage the public to go read it. I think it starts on page 80, and unfortunately it is in court reporter speak, which is always especially ugly when you're reviewing those minutes. So with that, are there any other closing comments, or we will wrap this up? Hearing none, then we are adjourned at 3:34.